Well, everybody, Fani Willis has given her testimony before the Georgia Senate Committee, and it was possibly worse than the first time she testified in the infamous pink dress. I am shocked that it was as bad as it was because I was really expecting something better from her this time around. People have described it so far as a train wreck of testimony. I think it was more like maybe if a train wreck happened and then a fire truck and an ambulance on the way to the train wreck hit a school bus full of nuns, puppies, and orphans. And then the whole thing ended up in a fireball. That's the best way I can describe it. She was unhinged and not in a good way. Um, I am genuinely surprised that it went as badly as it did because she has had so long to prepare for this. And this was so important for her to kind of rehabilitate her image after the infamous pink dress testimony. So I genuinely, you must go watch it for yourselves. You can kind of fast forward through it. There's just so many different parts that you could watch to kind of understand what I'm saying. There were moments of lucidity by her, but for the most part, it was just anger and bitterness and not really making any sense. From a substantive standpoint, I'm going to give you some of the quotes in a minute that I thought were the most entertaining. But let me just tell you this really quick. She came in this white outfit with like fur on it. And I think she was trying really hard to project this image of being put together and confident. And you know when people do that, but it's kind of cringy? That's kind of the way it felt to me, like she was trying too hard. Um, and when she started talking, her goal, I think, was to be strong and confident. And I mean, in a good way, defiant. I think that was her goal, but that's not what ended up happening. It ended up looking very much like she was so bitter and angry that she was almost incoherent. And that was completely, honestly, I'm shocked that it was so bad because she had so much time to prepare. And if she had come in um, put together, and I don't mean physically put together, I mean like emotionally put together, and was able to kind of sit down and dazzle everybody with her knowledge of numbers and statistics and things like that, and really give substantive answers to very basic questions. How is your budget handled? Things like that. But 9 times out of 10, she said she didn't know and that it was the county's responsibility, or she was high level and she didn't handle those things. She had never seen a bill from Nathan Wade. She didn't know how they got paid. I mean, it was absurd. And again, she failed this really great opportunity to show the world how competent she was, and the opposite ended up happening. So I guess I know I'm coming across as a little surprised still, and I genuinely am. So I'm going to show you a clip in a minute, but if you all do end up watching this, please comment and let me know what you think, because we've all seen the commentary that it's bad, but I kind of want to go below that into what was she thinking was going to happen with the way she behaved today. So just to show you a little bit of the unhinged commentary, this is her when she was trying to get across the point that the attorney general's office has paid other attorneys a lot of money. I think that was her way of justifying how much money she had paid Nathan Wade. But watch this.
The AG's office spent $65 million with the top recipient making $5 million initials MR, and I'm going to finish. And 2024, the top recipient was MR. And
So you can see that the person handling the Senate committee hearing had to actually mute her mic. And it happened more than once. And for those of you that haven't watched the video yet, let me assure you, they did give her plenty of opportunities to answer questions. She just went off. Sometimes she just ignored the question entirely and went off on some random tangent. And so I don't think he had any choice at certain points but to mute her mic to try to get on with the hearing. And I will say this too. Have you all ever seen the movie Office Space? Do you remember the lead guy gets hypnotized in the very beginning of the movie so that he doesn't care about going to work? I think that whoever ran that Senate committee hearing today and asked her most of the questions had to have been hypnotized because he was so damn calm through the entire thing. I don't know how he kept it together, but he did. I mean, his calmness and his ability to control himself was legendary. So shout out to him for just maintaining. All right, so the other thing I want to show you, this is one place where a little bell went off for me. So watch this video real quick, and then I'll talk to you about it on the other side.
So on your advice of counsel, you're asserting privilege.
I'm telling her not to answer.
I'm clarifying with the witness.
You don't have to answer that. I'm not a potted plant. I can answer.
You can advise. You can absolutely advise your client, Governor Barnes. I'm asking your client.
I suggest you move on.
I'm asking your client if you are asserting privilege on the answer to the question.
I made the objection on the record and told you even what you can do to enforce it.
What was the total cost of the election interference case?
I don't recall, but if we want to talk about cost, I'd love to talk about how last year alone the AG paid one lawyer $8 million.
You don't know what the cost you don't know the cost of the election interference case?
I don't know the exact cost.
Okay, so did you catch how she answered that question? He asked her how much this whole election interference case has cost Fulton County, which is a big question that a lot of us are wondering. But her knee-jerk reaction was to say, I don't recall. And then she said, oh, I don't know. And then she tried to change the subject again. But to me, it was a huge red flag that the first words out of her mouth were, I don't recall. So she's not even listening to the question. She's not even thinking about whether or not she knows. She's just saying, I don't recall. And then says, oh, I don't know. Well, those are two very different answers. And to me, that speaks volumes about, she was under oath, about her telling the truth here. And I think there are going to be multiple instances as people drill down deeper in this testimony that she gave where her credibility is going to be highly questioned. And that is the nicest way that I can put that. Okay, so let me get on to some of the other quotes that she had that I want to share with you. So one of the things I noticed throughout her testimony was that her ego was kind of getting more and more inflated as the testimony went on. So when she started, she was giving a little bit background about herself, and she mentions she was the first female DA in Fulton County, and then says she's the best to ever do the job. So she's saying she's the best Fulton County District Attorney in history. All right, but then it goes up from there. At some point during the testimony, they mentioned Sonia Allen, who's now the DA in Cobb County, and we know she's got her own set of problems. But she says, quote, she had a great DA from Fulton endorse her and she won. So implying, and she laughed at it, kind of as if she's implying that because she endorsed Sonia Allen, that was the reason that Sonia Allen won the election in Cobb County. So if I'm Sonia Allen, I'm not too happy that Fani Willis has said that about me. And then down the road, she says, I'm the best DA in the Southeast. So now we've gone from being the best DA in the history of Fulton County all the way up to being the best DA in the entire Southeast. But wait, it gets worse. So later on, a committee member had mentioned that he had donated to her first campaign, and she said, you selected the best DA in the country. So in the matter of an hour and a half of testimony, she went from being the best in Fulton County to the best in the Southeast to being the best DA in the country. Now, it didn't come across that she was saying it jokingly or with any kind of irony. She was literally saying the best DA in the country. And remember, she's been disqualified for the appearance of impropriety in an enormous case. So whether you agreed with that or not, it did in fact happen. So for her to say, out of all the DAs in the country, she's the best one, when that's happened to her through her own fault of having an illicit affair with someone who worked for her, that is not just ridiculous, it's unhinged is the only thing I can think of to say. So that part was pretty wild. Another interesting thing they brought up was the company critical mention that her office was paying $10,000 a year for. And really, what the company does is it tracks, your publicity online to see how you're doing. Well, when they asked her about it, she said, "Oh, well, we use it to, find witnesses and to learn about uh, issues that concern the community," which was an unhinged and ridiculous answer. It made no sense whatsoever, because then they put up emails where it showed that she was tracking the phrase Fulton County DA and the phrase Fani Willis. So she was watching her own publicity to see how she was doing on issues. No doubt everybody in the room knew that was the case. But then she tried to say, "Oh, well, I don't know anything about it. I don't even recall seeing that chart." And that she poo-pooed the idea that she would even care about publicity whatsoever. But yet, at the same time, she brought handouts for the media to her testimony. She said, "I have 50 copies of this to give out of something that she wanted people to see." So it was just ridiculous on its face that she was trying to deny that she had any interest in the publicity value of her name. Keep in mind, this is also a district attorney who has her own merch store, including candles and throws that you can buy. So that was laughable on its face. I can't believe she didn't just say, "Yes, I use this to track my own publicity." It would have been easier and a lot more believable. All right, let's go on to something else. Thank y'all for bearing with me on the quick cuts here. I have a cold and I keep wanting to cough, so I'm trying to do this as cleanly as I possibly can. So thank you for bearing with me. One of the biggest issues in all of this testimony, if you go back and watch it, I want you to pay attention to the number of times she refers to her own race or someone else's race. And I know we've seen her play that card in the past. She tried to use that when Ashley Merchant first found out about the affair that she was having with that Fani was having with Nathan Wade. Before Fani had even admitted it, she went and did that whole thing from the church pulpit and kind of blamed it all on her being attacked for her race. Well, it is 10 times worse in this testimony. I lost count of the number of times she blamed whatever she was talking about on her race. And she said this, and she actually said it, she tried to say it twice. She said, "You want to take me back to 1948 when African American prosecutors can only prosecute certain types of people, but I protect and stand up for all victims who come into my circuit." And it was unhinged because nobody was talking to her about who she was and wasn't allowed to prosecute. It's like she's trying to create some new narrative out of whole cloth that because she is African American, they were trying to stop her from prosecuting Trump. And again, she actually tried to say it a second time, which was strange, and her mic was muted. But she never owns the fact that the reason that this disintegrated and imploded in the first place was because she was having an affair with someone who worked for her. And that to me is the biggest problem. I think that she would get a lot more sympathy from people if she would say, "Yeah, I screwed up and I am sorry that this fell apart because of that." But instead, she's blaming it on her race and repeated that throughout the testimony. So when I say unhinged, it really was an extreme part of her testimony. So when you watch it, let me know what you think about that particular issue, because I found that interesting. One last point I want to make, and I swear I'm done, is she was shown a lot of documents throughout her testimony, and most of the time she said she had never seen them before. She didn't know anything about them. When I tell you all that she took ownership of nothing, I am not exaggerating. She didn't recognize bills. She doesn't know budgeting. I don't know what she does, because she doesn't seem to know anything about all the workings of her office. But she was happy to spit out a statistic when it helped her, but couldn't answer questions when people asked her about things. But one of the funny things she said at the very end was, she said that it's clear that some of these documents have been altered, referring back to the documents that they had been showing her on the screen during her testimony. But then in the same breath, she says, "But this is the first time that I've been seeing them." So how do you know if a document has been altered in some type of nefarious way if you've never seen them before? If there's a label on a document that says, this is what this document is, or there's an arrow pointing to something in particular, that's not altering a document, that's highlighting something. So I don't think that's what she was referring to. She was trying to suggest that things had been altered in some type of dubious fashion to trick her. But then at the same time, she was saying she had never seen them before. So again, very bizarre behavior. So I would really appreciate it if you all have the time to go back and watch the testimony. Please, please do, because this is going to be something worth talking about. This is a person who fully intends to run for district attorney again. And after today's testimony, I don't know how anyone would think that she is the right person for the job. It is really disturbing. So I will keep you updated. I'm sure there'll be a lot more conversation about her testimony today. But boy, this was worse than a train wreck. I don't even know how else to describe it. So that's all for now.